where the anger comes from.
Hello, everybody. My name is Esteban with Inspiration and Results. And today I have with me Dr. Ken Barrett. The topic for today's conversation is anger. Dr. Ken, let's talk about anger.
This is just a wonderful subject. This is one of my favorite subjects, as a matter of fact. A lot of my clients struggle with this. I might have mentioned to you that one of my clients, he corporate executive, before we got together, before we started working together, he had a petty conflict with one of his coworkers, and the conflict escalated constantly about them undermining each other, and ultimately I wouldn't want to say destroyed their careers. It caused a huge multi-year setback for both of them.
Oh, wow.
Both of them ended up leaving those positions, and so I do want to talk about anger and how we can manage anger correctly.
So how do we do that? How do we manage anger? And I know a lot of our viewers that might be watching, they might struggle with anger taking over, maybe road rage or things like that, right? Like where they get into an argument with their partner or business partner, or maybe, maybe even in their work of employment.
Yeah, one of the things is noticing and being straight about where the anger comes from. Really, anger it's a useful emotion. Obviously, it's there. It gives us energy in the moment. It is, I've got a 2-year-old. It is present in children right away, and it's useful. The thing to notice is being straight about where the anger is coming from, and that will start to give you power over it. Noticing if you're in road rage, you're being a 2-year-old. This person cutting you off is not going to affect your life. And what I recommend to my clients who do struggle with road rage is create a different context. So Steve Covey talks about how he's on the train in New York, and it's early Sunday morning, and people are drinking their coffee, they're reading the paper at the time, and it's a very peaceful scene. There's a guy up there with 2 kids, and the kids are going crazy. They're tearing the newspapers out of people's hands, they're going nuts, they're acting up, they're spilling people's coffee, and finally he said, "Sir, can you control your children?" And the guy woke up like he was in a daze, and he said, "I'm so sorry. I just came from the hospital and your mother died."
Wow.
So, yeah. So the context for everybody on the train shifted. Now, people took care of the kids, entertained the kids, for the subway ride. Now, so you can change the context, just like I did for us. You could change the context in an instant. What I always say is, if you're, because listen, I get triggered if I'm in the left lane and I'm going at a really, really good speed, and somebody's behind me flashing their brights at what I'm convinced is an unsafe speed, of course. Then what I do now is I say they must have a sick child in the back seat, and they're rushing to the hospital. Right. So I move right up.
Right.
Now, am I right? Am I wrong? It doesn't matter. What that did was that changed my experience. I'm not depressing my immune system by getting angry. I'm not white knuckling the wheel. I'm not potentially causing a hazardous situation, an unsafe situation. What I'm doing is moving over and just letting them go. It's not up to me to police the roads. It's up to police for the police to do that. So, does that make sense?
It does. It does. So changing the context of things, trying to understand that way anger doesn't rule you, right?
Yeah.
Because when, like you said something about the immune system. Let's talk about that. What happens to the body when we enter into anger? What are we doing?
That's a great question. Well, anger is when you look at the physiology of the brain, we think that it's not a physical thing. We think it's just a mental thing. It's not. If you've ever been in a close call, whether it's a car accident or something else, if you've ever that your heart will keep beating even after you realize the threat is over, because there is, if you picture that your conscious mind is like the top of a mountain, a lake, the top of a lake, and that the midbrain, which is your emotional brain, and your reptilian brain, which is your brainstem, are lower in the mountain, the water spills over and activates these various places and causes your physiology to change completely. When your physiology changes, the blood goes through skeletal muscles, your digestion turns off, and or slows way down. And the reason is you're in fight or flight, and in fight or flight, it's designed so that you can get away from the saber-toothed tiger that's chasing you back at running around in caves. The trick is to notice when that happens. You won't be able to completely manage it. Your physiology is fundamentally altered for a period of time.
Okay.
But what you could do is take yourself away. But your immune system, non-essential systems turn off.
Okay.
And that is
now this happens when anger shows up.
When you're angry.
So when you're angry, you're literally entering fight or flight, correct?
Yeah.
So,
but all these things. So then you have people who have chronic digestion problems, chronic immune problems, even things like autoimmune things like arthritis and those things. Those are all activated or made worse through anger. Anger is not good for you. It's a temporary adrenaline rush that gives you energy, and people can become actually addicted to this. People become addicted to the chemicals that are produced in your brain.
Okay.
These are called, in neurology, they're called facilitated pathways, and it's kind of like a trail going through the woods. If you see the easiest trail, you're typically going to take that instead of walking through the woods. It's like that in terms of your neural circuits. So if you're used to getting angry, you're always going to get angry. You're always going to get cheap energy through that. And you're probably going to have, for example, a diet that's going to stimulate those things. You're going to drink a lot of coffee. You're going to do the things that encourage the anger. And, it's funny. I find many people will pick fights with their spouse to distract themselves. And it's no better than just having a drink to relax. What you're doing is you're getting a hit of that drug. And the trick is to realize what you're doing, maybe shift the context, and then you can recover.
Wow, that's powerful insight, Dr. Ken. That is incredible. So what would you say to someone that has already developed a pathway to anger, and that's how they deal with life? Like, what's a good way to start managing or maybe interrupting going into anger all the time?
That's a great question. One of the things we mentioned is simply going ahead and shifting the context.
Okay.
What I do, if I get upset with my wife, I shift the context. I remember how much this person means to me. Anger it really is like a torpedo you send out and you can't bring back. It just like the example of the corporate executive I gave you. The damage, unfortunately, was irreparable, and I hate saying irreparable because I'm a coach, and really anything can be salvaged. Anything, any circumstance, in my opinion, can be redirected, and something better can come out of it.
Okay.
I think there's an easy way to do things, and there's a not so easy way to do things. And if you're going to get angry and sabotage relationships, then it's probably going to cost you money, it's going to cost you time, and it may cost you love.
Right. Right. So we got to get this thing under control.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Because there's a high price to pay, because it affects every aspect of our lives. It has our relationships with our close ones, and also our professional relationships, if we don't get this under control.
It does. And when you say under control, I'm not saying don't use the emotion. The emotion is there for you to use. It's wonderful if you can control it. I like to use the example of, I had an employee, a staff member, who was doing some manual work for me, and he got upset over something somebody else said. So he started slamming things around. And I tried reasoning with him, I tried communicating with him. He wasn't hearing it, he wouldn't stop. And I got angry and matched his emotion. I was pushing just as hard as he was. Not physically, by the way, but emotionally, I was pushing just as hard. And it calmed him right down. I asked him in a very stern tone, do you want to leave? Do you want to go home? And it changed everything. What that did for him was it changed the context. In other words, he had to make a decision now. Oh, I could go home and not get paid, or I could keep working and do my job.
Right.
Yeah.
Almost like the train example you gave earlier, which is the lady or the person was upset in the train, said, hey, get your kids under control here, buddy. And then he gave the context, and now the lady's like, or the guy, whoever it was trying to be helpful now with his situation.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's a pattern, I guess. It's an interruption of the idea, of the emotion. And so I have a question about, you did say that even after the anger is gone, the body still feels the residual of it, right? So we could still be disconnected because we entered into anger, but it can affect us for the rest of the day. We may not necessarily is that because we rehearsed the memory of it, or our body's still in shock? Because when you get angry, adrenaline rushes, right? But then you feel like you were in a fight, even though you weren't in a physical fight, right? It could. How do you bring your body back to normal after anger?
So that's great. So you're mentioning something. So the heat up part, the adrenal rush, it's not very long. It's a few moments. It's minutes. It's not hours.
Wow.
If you find yourself dwelling on it, that's a different issue. It still remained on some level as incomplete for you. So the thing to do is to process it a little bit better. Okay. Does that make sense?
When you say processing, how do we process? Is it verbal? Is it writing?
It's actually, you could write it down. You can try journaling. That's an easy thing. You can talk to your coach. That's one of the things you could do. Cool. So, in terms of that, that's a little bit tougher. And then you got to get into, if somebody's dwelling on these things, then you've got to consider, well, what am I getting out of? Am I addicted to the chemicals that my brain produces when I dwell on these things? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like, like you want more anger, right?
Yeah, like you want more, you want to replay it, or you want to, feel like a victim, or whatever it is. And then
bring that.
If that's a facilitated pathway. Yeah.
I do want to touch on that, because a lot of people say, well, I don't get angry. People make me angry. How do, because a lot of us may not even be aware, and we might say, well, if you didn't do this, I wouldn't get upset. We have all these rules and conditions around anger. I guess everybody has different rules around it, right?
Yeah.
But most people say, well, you made me angry. You made me upset. You did this that caused me to become. Yeah. Well, what do you say?
That's common, and it's I'm going to use the word dysfunctional, and not to judge. I'm using the word dysfunctional because we all have dysfunctional patterns that we've deployed in the past.
Okay.
And that's an example of a dysfunction. And I'm saying dysfunctional because it doesn't make logical sense. It doesn't help you progress.
Right.
Yeah. So in terms of the anger, Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent.
I like that.
And no one can make you feel angry without your consent. Now, I know it seems like, oh, they did this to me. Yeah, if somebody does something you don't like, you set a boundary. If they do it again, you cut them out of your life. I mean, and anger legitimately has its place. If somebody physically attacks you, get angry. That's a great solution.
Right. That's awesome. Dr. Ken, this is a great topic, man. I love it.
It really is a fun topic. I just want to mention, because you mentioned, how you feel the rest of the day. Swami Dhyanananda, he is an actual Swami, and he's a comedian. And somebody asked him at one of his events, I recall, somebody said, well, what about the earthquakes in California? And because he lives in California. And he said, if you find a fault, don't dwell on it.
Okay, I like that.
So don't dwell on stuff that you have no control over.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you, Dr. Ken. Well, for those of you watching out there, this is great talk on anger. If you would like to find out and learn more about Dr. Ken, please visit drkenbarrett.com. That's Dr. Ken, K-E-N, Barrett, B-A-R-R-E-T-T.com. You can also visit inspirationandresults.com. Dr. Ken, thank you so much for being on this call and giving us so much insight on our emotions, specifically to anger. Thank you.
Thank you.